Welcome back to another episode of Torqued. Today I'm going to show you the Holley Stealth fuel injection installed, a few things that I did for that, and then I'm also going to show you how to crimp your own ignition wires, how to put those together. So let's get out of the cold and let's get to work. Alright, we're up to the step to install the Sniper Stealth EFI. So let's get started on this. So the first thing we'll do is we got our gasket. And here is the Sniper EFI. I had to make my own fuel log for this. They were out of stock of the one that I really wanted, so I wanted it to look pretty good. A little bit more expensive, but I think it looks pretty good. Let me talk about the different plugs on here. So there's a plug for the water temp, a plug for your display that you'll actually put in all your inputs for what kind of engine, size, that type of thing. This is the main connector, which has the power going to it, and you know, ignition, a few other items. And then you have a larger one, which is your input output, which will actually control fans, a few other things. And last, you have an O2 sensor connector. So it's not that hard, just a little time consuming. Let's go ahead and put this thing on and see how it looks. All right, let me get some bolts. Make sure, again, put some anti-seize on these bolts because they are going into aluminum. I'm using ARP stainless bolts, and that's the main reason. They don't make a true throttle bracket for this Stealth. I actually called Holley to ask them. They referred me to Locar. I called Locar. They told me to go to Holley. So what I did is I made up I had an old bracket, and what I tried to do is trying to center the throw on the throttle itself, and I'll kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. All right, I'm going to bring out my crude drawings here to help you understand what I was talking about. So if this is the carburetor itself, and your throttle cable will actually go straight over here. What I tried to do is center this up. This is your throttle cable coming through here, going straight over. I want to try and center that up as this goes full throttle. It's kind of right in the center. And then here's your return spring, and it actually will be also centered up. So what I had to do was actually add an adapter there, weld one up to actually move it up. And most of these throttle plates have a stop on them, and I'll show you that. So there's the little stop, which you can adjust so that you can keep this from going forward with the springs attached at the bottom. So as you can see, this is just about level with this. So when the throttle goes full, it's going to be about the same height. So it should work out pretty good. Okay, so I connected all the plugs on the back side of the Sniper. I've got them kind of routed the way I wanted. I also ran my positive and negative wire off the alternator. That's actually running underneath the manifold. I was trying to make it as clean as possible. Didn't want to try and run it down to the frame and run it out. I thought it would show too much. So now I've got to put everything on the top dead center, and I always get this thing 180 out. So today I thought I'd try this, and I think this is going to work out pretty good. So I pulled out all the spark plugs, and I put a compression gauge on the #1 cylinder. So now I'll just roll this over, and whenever it starts to go up, I'll know that I'm approaching top dead center. So let's try this out. All right, let's start turning this. There we go. Pressure's starting to come up. It's getting a little harder to turn. I'm about 60 degrees before it topped dead center. 40. I'm just letting the pressure off the gauge. And that is like almost dead on, top dead center. So, all right, next was to prime the engine, the oil. So what I did originally is I purchased this, of course, cheap primer, oil primer on Amazon. Of course, I know better than that. This thing did not work. So what I ended up doing was taking an old distributor, and I don't know if any of you guys have done this before, but it's fairly simple. I did take off the gear drive, that whole assembly, and it's just a roll pin in there. I pulled that out, cut off the gear, and that's just so that at the very end it will center up your drive rod that goes down to the oil pump. There's a little tiny clip that's right on the top of here. Pull that clip off and you can pull out this whole rotating assembly that sits up on top. So fairly easy to do. Put your drill on there, 1/2-inch drive drill, and I was able to prime the engine. I turned it over a couple times, kept on priming, so I think I've got it primed pretty well. So let's move on to the next step. All right, next we're going to drop in the distributor, and this is going to take a little bit of time. The distributor, you have to put a couple O-rings on here, and I can tell you, just by experience, trying to get these O-rings over this gear drive is extremely difficult. So put a piece of tape, wrap around the drive itself, and you'll be able to slide it right onto their grooves. When you drop this in, you want to, of course, point the contact at #1 cylinder, but also there's a second thing that you have to do with this Sniper is that you have to put this clear cap on and rotate everything until the cap drops into place. So I'm going to try and get this thing close beforehand so that I won't have to worry about that. So you can see I'm going to move this thing, and there we go. It's dropped in place. So I'm going to try and pull this back off. I'm going to try and aim this for #1 cylinder, and then we'll see if we can get it dropped in place. All right, it took a few attempts to get this all lined up. I did have to use that priming tool, oil pump priming tool, to move the drive so it would line up and drop in. So now all you have to do is take the cap, and we got it fairly close, I believe. Twist the cap around. Boom, it drops right in. So now we'll take the hold down clamp. I'll put that in. We'll tighten this down. We may have to adjust it a little later during the setup time and when we do a final tune on the timing itself. So, all right, we've got the Holley Sniper all bolted up. I did add that little bracket for the throttle bracket, and you can see it sat it up enough that it's pretty much straight in line, so that should work out pretty good. All right, I'll show you guys where I mounted my ignition box. Came out pretty good. There's my ignition box in my glove box, and here is the LCD screen where you do all the programming. It does come with like a little pen too, so I just used some Velcro to hold all this stuff down. So it came out pretty good. Okay, so now I'm working on spark plug wire holders, and I wanted to find something that wasn't horizontal and flat. I wanted to find something that would tuck it up against the valve covers. So I came across these Billet Specialties wire holders, plug wire holders, and we're going to try these out. You can see they have different ones. So this is for 4 wires, 3, we've got 2, and then the 1. So I'm gonna have to loop these wires around, and of course the other side is a little bit different because the plugs are angled, and you can see that it's going to be right there, loop right in there. So let's keep on installing these holders, and then we'll get to the plug wires in a little bit. All right, so you can kind of get an idea what it's going to look like. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you actually have one on the back side of the block too, so the wires will just wrap around. We'll get to that point. We'll get our wires out, and we'll have to cut them to length and crimp them, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, I will show you what I got to do this job. I did purchase a set of crimpers for the ignition wires, and it was well worth it. They're a little bit spendy. From Accel, it was $81. That was through Summit, but it does come with dies. So if you don't have an electrical crimping set of pliers, this would be your set, because it crimps these wires. It also crimps for the different gauge wires for your terminal ends, and then it also has the other terminal ends, what we spoke about earlier, where it crimps the wire onto itself to go into your little fittings for, let's say, your headlights or whatever, to snap in. So it's worth it if you don't have a set of crimpers. I also am using Dow Corning 4. I've been using this stuff at work for a long time. Stuff works excellent. It's electrical insulating compound. It's like a little grease, and it works really well. I'll show you how I put these terminal ends and boots on. This makes it a lot easier. Okay, so we've got our Accel. This is just a spare piece of 8mm wire. You don't want to do any damage, of course, to the core of this, where you're actually getting your spark through. So you have to, of course, mark where you want to cut, and then add an extra 5/8 of an inch for your core to be wrapped around to put the terminal end on. And these actually have a cutter on them. Works really well. Put it on there, crimp it, and I like to crimp it twice. Turn this 90 degrees, crimp it again. And sometimes it doesn't get all of the little pieces, but if you kind of roll this around, you may be able to twist this off. And if you're not able to, just take a little razor blade and barely score around it. I don't want to pull too much on this. And there we go. There's your core. Now you're going to have some little pieces of material sitting up, so I just have a little set of scissors to cut this extra material off. And there we go. So there we have the core of the wire where you're getting your spark from, and this is really easy. I couldn't believe how easy this was. So here's your little terminal end. What you do is you fold this back over onto itself, put the terminal end, and the portion folded over goes to the kind of like the top of the terminal end. Oh, one thing we need to do before this is these terminal ends are spread out a little wide, too wide for really the crimpers. So take a set of pliers and barely squeeze this in. There we go. Now fold this over. Put your terminal end on. They say to keep like a 1/16 of an inch gap here. We're pretty close. We're close to that. And you can see it's holding on a little bit just because we squeezed it on some. Now this is where these pliers really work out well. So you can see this part, it actually takes the metal and folds it over on itself. So let's go ahead and put that in. Make sure it's centered up. Look at that. Fold it right up on itself. That's pretty much perfect crimp. Now here's where you're going to save a little bit of time. All right, so putting this in the boot is normally a pain in the butt, and of course the directions want you to take the wire all the way through, which is damn near impossible to get around that corner. You can do it, but it just takes a while, and then they want you to pull the terminal end back around. If you use this DC4, well, it's electrical insulating. Put a little bit on the inside of that boot, and then put some around the terminal end and actually on the wire itself. Just push this in, and there it is. I don't know if you can see it inside, but it's perfectly lined up. That took what, all of 20 seconds? So a lot easier to use this than trying to pull that back through and trying to have that terminal go around the corner. It worked out really well. I hope that helps. All right, so as you can see, I've got everything, all the wires put on there. I am waiting for my final wire, which I have to go to a 90 degree, because this of course loops out so far that my steering column is going to come through, and it's gonna probably touch this. They do have 90 degree boots, but of course they come in white, so I'll have to put some shrink tubing over it, maybe to make it blend in a little bit. That's my final wire to do. So the fuel injection system is pretty much all wired up except for that one wire. We're getting really close to the point where maybe we can start this. I still have to get my radiator support, all that put in, but that's pretty simple to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.